Tourism in Las Vegas in a big slump this summer, costing the city billions.
Possible layoffs at certain hotels and Caesars Entertainment being removed from the S&P 500. Visitors have questioned whether the Strip is still a value destination.
Vegas built its whole identity on one promise. Come here and feel like you belong. Caesars Palace was the place that breathed that promise daily. That promise, though, is breaking right now, in ways that go far deeper than any headline has shown. And once you see how it is happening, your look at the Strip will change forever. It does not start with debt, bad management, or even Wall Street. It starts with one man, one idea, and a decision about punctuation that tells you everything you need to know. His name was Jay Sarno. He was not a mogul. He was not a casino man. He was a motel developer from Georgia who one day had an idea so simple and so strange that nobody in Las Vegas had ever thought of it. He did not want to build a casino with a hotel attached. He wanted to build ancient Rome, right there in the Nevada desert, for everybody. Not for the high rollers, not for the men in suits with bottomless credit, for the plumber from Cleveland, the schoolteacher from Phoenix, the factory worker from Detroit who saved 11 months to afford 4 nights on the Strip. Jay Sarno looked at those people and saw Roman emperors, all of them, every single one. He called it Caesars Palace, no apostrophe. That was not an accident. It was the whole philosophy in one punctuation decision, not Caesars, belonging to one man. Caesars, belonging to all of you. The moment you walked through those doors, you were a Caesar. That was the deal. That was the promise. And on August 5th, 1966, when those doors opened for the first time and 200 toga-clad hostesses greeted every guest with the word Caesar instead of Sir, something happened in Las Vegas that had never happened before. Ordinary people felt like they owned the place. The Bacchanal restaurant charged $15 for a 6-course meal. Goddess-robed waitresses poured wine from jugs and placed grapes directly in your hands. In 1966, that is not a luxury experience reserved for the wealthy. That is luxury handed to anyone who showed up. That was Sarno, his entire idea. Make excess feel democratic. But here's the thing about Jay Sarno that most people never talk about. He was not a businessman. He was a dreamer. And dreamers build things that are too good to stay in their own hands for very long. He sold Caesars Palace in 1969 for $60 million and walked away to build his next idea. He died in 1984. Heart attack, hotel room. Never saw what came next. What came next is the part that will hit you differently by the time this is over. Because the people who bought what Jay Sarno built did not see what he saw. They saw something else entirely. They saw a number, a revenue figure, a brand, an asset. And when the most powerful financial minds in the world start looking at a place that was built on a feeling and see only an asset, something begins to happen that is very slow and very quiet and very hard to stop. The fountains keep running, the statues keep smiling, the sign stays lit. But what made it real? What you actually came for? That is the first thing to go. For a while, though, nobody could see it coming. Nobody wanted to, because in the years after Sarno sold, Caesars Palace did not shrink. It grew. It became something so large and so loud and so American that the whole world knew its name, not because of what it charged, because of what it gave. The boxing was the first thing that made it a legend. On March 6th, 1987, Sugar Ray Leonard stepped into a ring set up outside in the Caesars Palace parking lot and fought Marvin Hagler in front of 15,000 people. 80 million more watched on television. Every single one of them saw that sign. Caesars Palace. 3 words that meant one thing. This is where the biggest moments happen. They did not pay for that advertising. They earned it by being the place where history kept showing up. Mike Tyson, Oscar de la Hoya, Evander Holyfield. For 3 decades, the most important fights in boxing happened under that sign. Every broadcast was a commercial. Every knockout was a reason to book a room. Then came the Forum Shops, 1992. A Roman streetscape built inside the casino, with a painted sky that cycled from dawn to dusk every hour and stone fountains with gods that actually moved and spoke. It was completely absurd. It was also the highest grossing retail space per square foot in America. People who came to gamble stayed to shop. People who came to shop stayed to gamble. Sarno had been right all along. Give people a world to walk into and they will spend money inside it without even thinking about it. And here is what mattered most before this story goes somewhere very different. At the same time, all of this was growing. The thing that made ordinary people love Caesars was still alive. The $5 blackjack table in the back corner of the floor. The buffet that cost you $25 and gave you 500 dishes and a line out the door. The pool where the man in the standard room and the man in the penthouse sat in the same water. That is what Caesars Palace was at its peak. Not a luxury resort, a democratic one. And that specific combination, spectacle on the outside and belonging on the inside, is something no casino has ever managed to pull off the same way since. Then Celine Dion walked onto the Coliseum stage in 2003 and played 723 shows and generated $385 million in ticket sales, the most successful entertainment residency in history at that point. Vegas had always had performers. Caesars invented something different. It invented the destination. Come to this specific room, in this specific building, because there is nowhere else on earth this experience exists. That is the version of Caesars Palace that people fell in love with. That is exactly what made what came next so brutal to watch, because the people who took over from here did not see any of that. They saw something else entirely. They saw a number. That number had a name: $30.7 billion. In January 2008, two private equity firms called Apollo Global Management and TPG Capital bought Caesars Entertainment Corporation for $30.7 billion. They put in about $6 billion of their own money. They borrowed the other $24 billion, and then they did something that is completely legal and completely common and completely devastating when you understand what it actually means. They told Caesars Palace to pay the debt back itself. That is what a leveraged buyout is. You buy something worth $30 billion. You borrow most of it, and then the thing you just bought, the casino, the hotel, the fountains, the forum shops, the boxing arena, all of it, that thing now has to generate enough money every single year to cover the interest on a loan it never asked for. You keep the upside. The casino keeps the weight. In a good economy, with Vegas running hot and rooms selling out and high rollers flying in from everywhere, that weight is heavy but manageable. Apollo and TPG knew that. They ran the numbers. They had a plan. The plan did not survive January 2009. The deal closed in January 2008. Lehman Brothers collapsed in September 2008. Consumer spending fell off a cliff. Vegas took a hit like it had not seen in a generation. Gaming revenue dropped 20% in a single year. The debt that was designed for a booming economy was now sitting on top of a casino that was bleeding money, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop the math from getting worse every single quarter. So they started making decisions. The kind of decisions that keep a company alive on paper while quietly changing what that company actually is. This is what most coverage of Caesars has never fully explained, and it connects everything you are about to see. The most valuable properties got moved. Caesars Palace itself, Planet Hollywood, the link. They were transferred into separate holding entities that carried far less debt. The debt stayed in one box, the prize went into another box. The creditors, the people and funds that were owed billions, were left holding the box with the debt in it. When they went looking for the assets that were supposed to back that debt, those assets were somewhere else. And while all of that was being arranged in boardrooms and law offices, something small and easy to miss was happening on the ground floor. In 2009, a new line appeared on your hotel bill. Resort fee, $20 a night, then $30. Mandatory, non-negotiable, not in the advertised room rate, just there when you checked out with a name designed to sound like a perk. Jay Sarno charged $15 for a 6-course meal because he wanted you to feel like you belonged there. The new owners charged $20 for the right to use the pool you were already paying for. That is the moment the promise started breaking. Not all at once. Just one fee at a time. One fee at a time turned into one filing at a time. On January 15, 2015, Caesars Entertainment Operating Company walked into a federal bankruptcy court in Chicago and filed for Chapter 11 protection. The total debt was $18.4 billion, one of the 10 largest corporate bankruptcies in American history. And while the lawyers were filing that paperwork, the lights in Caesars Palace were still on. The fountains were still running. A man from Ohio was probably sitting at a blackjack table on the casino floor at the exact moment his favorite casino was telling a federal judge it could not pay its bills. Las Vegas is very good at keeping the lights on while everything falls apart behind the walls. The creditors noticed what had happened with the asset transfers. The hedge funds and bondholders who were owed $18 billion hired lawyers, and those lawyers looked at where the most valuable properties had gone, and they filed suit. They argued that Caesars Palace itself, Planet Hollywood, the link, had been deliberately moved out of reach before the bankruptcy filing, that the box with the debt had been separated from the box with the prize. The lawsuit sought billions. The legal fight took years. In the end, Caesars settled for around $8.5 billion, and the people who were owed $18 billion got back somewhere around 60 cents on every dollar they were owed. The people who designed the structure did not lose everything. Most people never hear that part. Then came the merger that most people did not fully understand at the time. In July 2020, a regional casino company called El Dorado Resorts bought Caesars Entertainment for $17.3 billion. El Dorado was based in Reno, Nevada. It was a fraction of the size of Caesars. It operated mid-level regional casinos in places most people do not travel to specifically for a vacation, and it used Caesars' own borrowing capacity to finance the purchase of Caesars. Then it kept the Caesars name and moved the combined company headquarters to Reno. The most famous casino brand on earth was now being run from a city most people drive through on the way to Lake Tahoe. What followed is something you felt even if you never read a single headline about it. 13,000 employees were furloughed or laid off during the pandemic, and many of them did not come back. The dealers who remembered your name, the cocktail waitresses who knew what you were drinking before you asked, the floor managers who had worked there since the boxing years. Those people carried the feeling Jay Sarno built just as much as the marble did. When they left, they took something with them that does not show up on any balance sheet. The resort fee at Caesars Palace is over $50 a night now. At the Flamingo, it is the same. At Horseshoe, the same. At Paris, Las Vegas, the same. Properties that used to charge under $30 are now charging $50 on top of a room rate that has also climbed every single year. And the stock is down 50% in 2 years. And they just got removed from the S&P 500. And the rooms are emptier than they have been in recent memory. Jay Sarno charged $15 for 6 courses and called you a Caesar. The people running his casino now charge $50 for the pool and call it an amenity. The amenity is not the point. It never was. The point is what the amenity replaced. It replaced a philosophy. It replaced a decision that a man from Georgia made in 1966 when he left the apostrophe out of the name on purpose because he wanted you to know that this place was yours, not his, not the shareholders, not the hedge fund in New York, yours. That is not a small thing to replace with a $50 pool charge. That is the whole thing. Nobody wants to say this out loud about Las Vegas right now. Caesars is not an isolated case. It is the clearest example of something that has been happening across the entire strip for years. And the reason it hurts more with Caesars is because Caesars was the one that made the original promise. The one that said ordinary people belong here. When that specific place starts pricing ordinary people out, it is not just a business story. It is something closer to a betrayal. You felt it before you had words for it. The drinks that took longer to arrive. The dealer who did not know your name because it was only his 3rd week. The table minimum that had doubled since your last trip. The line at the buffet that did not exist anymore because the buffet had closed. None of those things made a headline. All of them added up to the same feeling. The feeling that you were no longer a guest, you were a transaction. And here is what stays with you after all of it. The fountains are still running. Right now, tonight, the fountains out front of Caesars Palace are running and lit up and as beautiful as they have ever been. The toga statues are still standing. The forum shops are still open. The sign is still there. Everything that is supposed to say the promise is alive is still in place. But a company carrying $13 billion in debt after a bankruptcy and a merger does not make decisions based on what a plumber from Cleveland feels when he walks through the door. It makes decisions based on what keeps the debt serviceable for one more quarter. And those two things, the feeling and the math, have been pulling in opposite directions for a long time now. The math is winning. Jay Sarno died before any of this happened. Maybe that is the kindest version of this story. He built the thing, he sold it, he moved on, and he never had to watch someone turn his philosophy into a fee structure. The rest of us did not get that option. We watched it happen in real time, one price hike at a time, one quarterly report at a time, one empty room at a time. The Strip is still there. The lights are still on. But the Vegas that told you that you belonged there, that Vegas is the thing that is collapsing, and now you know exactly why.